Earliest memories of motorsport. You were a spectator basically in a pram.
Mum says to me that I was about 6 days old, I think, in the must have been 1976, because that was when I was born. So a 1976 rally in Canberra, spectating for my dad. So my dad was running an event there in Datsun 1600 at about car 95 or something like that. So
Awesome.
So I had no hope. But I've got a famous photo at work, which is Huey Bell going over the mine shaft in the 1983 Castrol Rally, I believe.
Yep.
And you can see Mark and I, my brother and I, spectating halfway up the mine shaft.
I love that.
As a 6 or 7-year-old. So basically I had no chance from day one, really, did I?
Famous. I mean, famous piece of road in the Australian Rally Championship, and a guy that Pedder's, among others, supported along the way. Huey's one of them, isn't he?
Yeah. And look, one of those guys. It's topical actually, because we're talking about WRC regs changing and having potentially more people coming out and winning rallies, apart from the sort of top 4 or 5 that can afford WRC one. Huey Bell, in my opinion, was one of those guys that, given the opportunity, he could have done some big damage in the World Championship for sure.
You made it to the WRC and did some competition there, which we'll come to. But I've done a bit of backgrounding here.
Right.
Spoke to your good brother, Mark, who was very helpful. Very helpful. He says that he can recall you being maybe age 3 or 4, pedal car, fully sideways, and that you went through some plastic wheels, true or false?
Yeah, I did. I had a pedal car, and fortunately enough to have a driveway with a nice downward grade. I could get to about 12k an hour, I reckon.
Scando flicks at 03. Yeah.
Right was a little bit scary because that was a pole on the outside. Left was had a bit of a gravel driveway next to it.
Okay.
So I chose right or left, and generally right, because that was the scarier side.
Love it. Next question's a bit loaded. Can you? I mean, we know you can drive the wheels off a rally car. What about mechanically minded? How mechanical?
Terrible.
Oh,
You got that from Mark as well.
I did.
Yeah, no, absolutely horrendous. I am shocking when it comes to people, mechanically minded people just know stuff, and I hang pictures and they come down straight away. I can't do anything mechanically, so no, inept.
But you play to your strengths, and you have several of those. Now, can we talk Halebreeze?
Yep.
The reason I want to do that, I mean, that's topical at the moment. Oscar Piastri went there.
Yep.
Obviously, they have a great foundation around him now, I think, which helps people that may want to go and study or do sport internationally. I think that's a really great initiative. And you've kept some really close-knit mates from that period of your life, and probably even beyond there, and they've all got their own individual success stories. So I worked with Adam Hilton at Channel 10 for a time. That you've got another great mate, Tim, Stu Fox, CEO of the MCG, and so on. You're all tight, you guys, aren't you?
Yeah, and I mean, I've been very fortunate to have 4 guys that I met day one in year 9, because I went to Brighton campus school, and those guys went to the Keysborough campus school, and we caught up literally day one, kicking the footy at lunchtime, and I was a big guy, they're big guys, so that was instantly a hit, and we've kept that friendship bond, the 4 of us going, and then obviously Stu Fox and Timmy Norman and those sort of guys. They're a bit later. They're school dads, friends. But I'm very, very fortunate to have a great bunch of guys that keep me grounded apart from rally.
Now, you said AFL there. Little birdie tells me you may have come to a crossroads as a teen. You could have gone the path of another sport. I'm told you're quite, and certainly were back then, a very handy tennis player.
Yep. Yeah. I sort of...
How big that get?
Yeah, I got to the stage where I probably got to the crossroads when I was about 16. I could have gone professional. I won a tournament in Yarrawonga, which was under 19s Coca-Cola sponsored tournament, which was basically all the best kids from around the state and the country, and particularly the country kids. And I won that as a 16-year-old. So that was sort of that was a moment when my coach said, "Righto, well, do you want to work or do you don't want to work?" Because the guy over in Russia or Poland or those sort of places is doing 12 hours a day. Are you prepared to do that? Because that's what you need to do. You've got the talent and all that sort of stuff. And I had girlfriends, and I loved food too much, and motorsport was becoming a thing. So I decided to be the lazy path and went the other way. But I love tennis, and I actually, given my personality, and this is probably an insight in my personality, from that day forward until my young fella, which is now, 20, 25 years later, I didn't pick up a tennis racket for 20, 25 years, up until just a few years ago. So probably one of the regrets of my life was not to continue playing tennis because I was pretty good at it.
Don't have regrets. Don't have regrets. I am told you did pick it up socially, though. I think Dean Herridge recounted to me that you and Mark might have played, he and someone else, I can't remember, and you absolutely smashed them in WA one year.
Yeah,
they didn't know what they were in for, did they?
Yeah, they saw a couple of two fat Pedder blokes and they thought we're going to wipe these guys. And I don't think they won a point, to be honest.
Didn't they?
No. I'm looking for, I think Harry and Lewis Bates are quite handy tennis players. Well, they talk themselves up, so okay. So maybe we need to bring them down to Kooyong and show them a few sets or two. Before
we move on from tennis, did you come across anyone in that period when did you play a Mark Philippoussis?
Yeah, I played Philippoussis twice. He was very, very good. He was number one in the world as a 14-year-old back then. Even though they didn't really have 14-year-old rankings, he was number one in the world by some stretch. A young kid called Andrew Illy, who I think got to the quarterfinals of the French Open. I played in squads with him.
Amazing.
Yeah, and actually, the funny story is I played semi-final. I think it was semi-finals. It's always bigger at 25 years. So it was probably a quarterfinal, but I'll go a semi. I played a doubles pairing of Dustin Fletcher, the Essendon fullback, and Chris Anstey, the NBA. Yeah. So at 14, they beat us 6-4 in the third set at the National Tennis Centre here. But I think Dusty was, let's say, 6'3" at 14, and I think Chris was about 6'6", so hard to lob. And my doubles, I was relatively tall. My doubles partner was about 4'11", so we almost got them, but they were a pretty handy pairing.
Nice. When did firstly, in telling the motor racing journey of your life, there is an influence from family here, isn't there? I mean, with what your dad did around Australia trials and so on. Even you touched on his rallying and so on there before, but it wasn't just rally, basically, was it? So
no, around Australia trials were very, very exciting. Obviously, Mark co-drove in the '95 one. I was off doing university study, and I actually didn't meet them until week 2 because I was doing exams.
What's your degree?
Bachelor of Commerce, Marketing and Accounting.
Excellent.
So, I didn't really go. I sort of just snuck my way through. It was a 3-year course that I took 4 years to do, but that's another podcast.
You got it done. That's good.
And then I got the chance to do the 98 rally, which was
it
was incredible. It was amazing. It's funny, it was sort of touted as an opportunity to spend some time with your dad, but the problem is that Dad would do all the competitive sections and then would fall asleep, and I would do all the transport sections. So you'd be on the road for 18 or 19 hours, and we joked after the rally. We said, it was probably only 1 hour a day. We're actually awake talking to each other. So it was but it was an unbelievable experience. Probably the most interesting and cool rally that I've done in my life.
Sixth, I think, too. You guys got sixth.
We got sixth, which was pretty cool. In a Commodore, which was, and obviously to spend 3 weeks with Brocky, was pretty amazing. Often the car behind or car in front, very rarely, but the car behind a lot with him. So and Brucey Garland, those sort of people. It was pretty Graham Wise, pretty amazing experience. And the Perth sunsets and far north, and it was unbelievably cool.
Beautiful. Plus you get to see, Garland's a great character. He's been on the pod before. Brock, sadly, is no longer with us. And you get to spend kind of quality time away from, media pressures and all that sort of stuff. What was he like?
Brock was the consummate professional, really, really nice guy. The hardest working person I've seen
really
in my career. They were tough days. They were, some of the days were 21, 22-hour days. And Brocky would be the last person there signing autographs, in some places that, not the safest places in Australia, Catherine's and that sort of stuff. But he used to be there, the last person signing autographs and probably get 1 hour's sleep. And talent-wise, I remember a stage actually not far out of Katherine, I think, in the Northern Territory. It was an old tarmac road, it was probably 30, 35 Ks, and he's in a standard jackaroo on rally suspension against, I think Guesty was still there or still in that at that point in a Subaru, and Brocky won the stage in a standard jackaroo because it was tarmac. And Dad thought he had a good run through there, and we had the Commodore, and I think I think Brocky beat us by about 4 or 5 minutes on that stage. So, yeah, look, as everybody knows, it goes on. He's unbelievably talented, and we got an opportunity to spend 3 weeks with, arguably the best and the biggest in the business.
Nice memory. Thank you for sharing that. Your own emergence, does it start with autocrosses with your brother? How did that all, and when was that? How did that all kick off?
Yeah, we actually started. Obviously, Dad had was driving and then sponsored Ed and that sort of stuff, and then we had a bit of a break, obviously, when we were playing tennis and school and that sort of stuff, and then Dad sort of got the inkling that we were getting an interest in motorsports. So Dad bought an Escort, Ernie Graham Mark II 76 Escort, so leaf sprung rear end. It had about 8 horsepower. This thing, it was 4-speed.
Twin Webbers?
Straight,
what was it?
Yeah, Webbers.
Yeah.
Downdraft, not side
Okay,
draft.
okay.
Wasn't too fast.
Uh-huh.
Straight cut gears and that sort of stuff. So
Awesome.
It sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Mark, Dad went out there and sort of, I'll show you boys how it's done. And he rolled into a creek with Mark on the first rally, so that was not a good start. And then from there, we actually ended up having 2 Escorts, and as you said, started with autocross. Actually, funny story. I drove to the Packham Auto Club track for my first ever autocross, and I just got my learners about 2 days before. So I think the second hour of my driving career, I was driving an Escort rally car, and for those that know Packham Autocross, it's you turn right across Princess Highway, so big downhill 4-lane or 3-lane trucks and that sort of stuff. I've stalled the Escort in the middle of Princess Highway, going up to the autocross track with Bill Orders, my uncle, sitting there and looking at me, going, "For Christ's sake, can you please turn the key? Let's go." So yeah, my first. I was so nervous on my first autocross. I'm on the start line, and I'm a 16-year-old kid. I might have even been 15, 16 maybe, yeah. I had a learner, so I must have been 16. And I said, "What do I do?" And Bill goes, "Well, just rev it to 5,000, drop the clutch." So I did, revved it to 5,000, dropped the clutch, and spun about 20 metres down the road. So that was probably an indication of my rallying career right there, I think.
No, I think we very quickly got a window into the kind of natural talent that you had there, mate. In this early phase, you and your brother share duties. So I think you co-drove for each other.
We did, yep.
What was that like?
Terrible.
Was it?
Yeah. I'm actually a state class winning co-drive champion for Bill. So I think I was a better co-driver than Mark.
He says you got him lost early on.
Oh,
though.
very lost. Yeah, because obviously back then, all the events were at night. There were maps and all that sort of stuff. And
tulips and stuff. It was even before that.
Even before that, maps.
Oh wow!
So marked up maps.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. So we did that. Yeah, but I think the first rally that I did as a driver, Mark wasn't the co-driver, but I think I came last by about 16 minutes because we were lost. But yeah, I co-drove for Mark, and famously he co-drove for me in, I think it was 97 when we upgraded to the VR4, which was a pretty big upgrade from a Escort with 10 horsepower, and I put him 6 feet up a tree. So that put an end to rallying for about 12 months because Mum said, and that was the end of Mark and Scott in the car together.
Mum intervened there, didn't she?
Mum intervened.
You can play, but not together like that, yeah.
And then we came back, obviously, in Evos and from there moved on. Yeah.
I think, in talking to some of them that were around the ARC then, they can recall moments, I guess, when the VRC was playing at the ARC round and so on, and people acutely became aware of you boys and what you were doing. Was it always going to be, you love rallying, it's in your DNA, mate, it's in your blood, but was it always the target, the ARC?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I grew up with the Australian Rally Championship in my blood. I was dragged to watch Dinter Officers and Hugh Bells and those sort of people, Portman's Furies,
Mega,
that sort of stuff. So I witnessed, in my opinion, the two biggest eras. One as a spectator, which was the 80s, and one as a competitor, which was the early 2000s, and maybe we're getting close to the third one now. So I'm sort of very fortunate to be able to be actively involved in those three areas or 3 eras.
Eras, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It was a natural progression from introductory trials through to club to state, and then we won 2 state championships in 99, 2000 as a 22 or 23-year-old. So, and having taste of doing rally in Melbourne those years, and pace notes, and having Ed Ordynski teach me about pace notes and that sort of stuff. So the natural progression was the ARC, and we had our own team there, which was just so much fun. Fabulous. Wasn't the best way to do it, and it wasn't the best way to be competitive, as we turned out. But geez, it was a lot of fun, and we got an opportunity to tie in the commercial part of Pedders as well, because at the same time, Mark and I were becoming more active in the business. And then sort of just progressed from there, obviously, and became factory drivers through to Asia Pacific, a world championship, and now back to the Australian Championship. So it's been a pretty good journey.
Yeah, real good journey. Let's touch on a few of those things. Firstly, I sort of began to do some reporting for Channel 10 around the year 2000, 2001. And I can vividly recall coming to do interviews with you guys. Bill Orders, I think, was team boss back then, wasn't he? His own son drove for a while there. You was a three-car team and so on. But it always sort of had this essence of what you were talking. I mean, like on the outside, really good Evo 3s. Were they Evo 3s you run back then?
Correct.
Yeah. And professional in its presentation, what you brought to the table, fast cars, good drivers, but you kept an almost barbecue fun element about it, didn't you?
Yeah, and then in hindsight, that's what we're trying to bring now, is just to bring the fun back. It's a bit more difficult when you're up in winning stages and you think you're a chance and that sort of stuff. But bringing that fun is really important. But that team was fun. We tied the business in. We had friends, long-term friends that had done the Round Australia trials, both of them with us as our team. There was no food and chef back then, so you get back and it was generally McDonald's or Pizza Hut. So that's probably why 10 kilos to blame over that journey. But it was just so much fun. I think our biggest part of our budget was beer, and it was just an amazing experience. As I said, Bill was a big part of that. Obviously, and we also had sponsors. We had suppliers and sponsors that came on the journey as well, which ironically we've got now 20 years later.
Was that a bit of a learning for you on the business side? I want to talk the Pedder's story here as we go, but when you do that kind of, I guess it's co-op based things where you're bringing in partners that you might work with in a business sense to come and play in that motorsport sense. Was that a good marketing learning for you?
It was. And obviously I'd done marketing at uni, so at that point I'd sort of gone into the one-man marketing team at Pedders and sacked the agency and started started marketing in the No Bull campaign and all that sort of stuff.
You came up with that?
No, I didn't come up with that. The agency came up with that, but I took it over and took their good work and took it forward. And then obviously the motorsport thing, they had supercars and TV with Channel 10, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the learnings from sponsorship and back in the days, because we treated those, regardless if they were suppliers or whatever, we treated those guys as proper sponsors, and we made sure that they got good value, and that's really taught me, both sides of the sport is that, I've been very fortunate to be able to tap on sponsors that, probably saw it as a rebate rather than a sponsorship payment. But at the same time, I've been able to go through my career and have that opportunity to see both sides of the sport.
When do you reckon you felt like, and you're one of your own, you're a hard marker on yourself, right? When do you feel like you had earned a place in the ARC elite, if you will? I mean, like you can look at results like second in 02 and 03 at the APRC event in Canberra and stuff before you go on to win South Australia and Melbourne in 05 and 06. When do you sort of feel like, right, I can more than hold my own here, I'm ready to go toe to toe with these guys?
Probably, this might sound a little arrogant, but probably early on. I am a hard marker on myself, but probably the one that people stood up, and even myself stood up, is that we'd done 2001 in the Evo 3, which was a PRC car. It was 10 years old. everyone thought it was a grunter and had unbelievable power. And essentially, it was a Group N car with a 34, with a slightly bigger restrictor. And we got some good results. I think we got 4th in Queensland that year behind, the 2 world cars and Cody, so that was okay. Then we started the first rally the following year, 02, was the Forest Rally, and we were car 8 or 9 or 10, and I got Ed's Evo 6, which I still rate as probably one of the best Evos, if not the best Evo. He'd moved up to a 7, and I got his 6. Awesome. And we were leading day one up until the last stage, and literally it's probably the most unlucky day of rallying that I've ever had, is that it was seriously windy, no dust. Obviously, we got the clean swept road, being car 9 or 10, and it literally for the last stage, I'm not sure why, the wind stopped. It went from 30 knots to 0, and Possum was car 1 and ended up winning the heat by about 6 seconds. And then to make it even, so we came second, and then we had a spin on day 2, and to make the unlucky even worse is that Ed and Possum actually tied for second in heat 2, and Simon won heat 2. That tie stopped us winning the rally, so we actually finished second in the rally on points, literally by 0.1 of a second. We could have won the first rally in the Group N, and then as you said, that went on to that next event was Canberra. So I started off my Group N career, pretty well. So probably the answer to the question is early on. There has been times throughout my career where I've thought of a bit of an imposter.
Why do you think that?
I mean,
you shouldn't. You should. I mean, you're whatever you are now. You're 48, I think, aren't you?
49.
49, yeah. and like you're winning stages. You're battling for heat wins. I mean, why would you?
I think speed wise, I've always had it. It's just that level of consistency. When you compare, some of the drivers, the Eds and Codys and that sort of stuff is, pace wise, no problems, but just that ability to do that pace for longer periods of time. That's what I'd like to get to, and I'm running out of years to get to that, and certainly this year I haven't got to that yet. But I think there's fast rally drivers and there's good rally drivers, and then there's great rally drivers. I think I'm fast and good. Am I great? I don't think so.
Okay. We'll come to more of this because, I mean, you've touched on eras before. I mean, you've competed against prior generations. You're now up against the next, generation of Bates. I mean, we've gone front-wheel drive, Group N to what we're enjoying now, and you're still, you're fast across a lot of them. Come back to the point where maybe the phone starts ringing the other way. So instead of you putting the programs together and Pedder's putting the programs together, what happens next? Are you on the forward foot, or is it starting to come back the other way?
It was interesting. I think obviously we were the third Mitsubishi car when we had the Pedder's team, and it was Ed and Spencer,
yes,
who had the 2 seats. By rights, they were very, very good drivers, both of them, obviously. But I think Mitsubishi saw me as he's always going to turn up, so we don't need to put him in a factory car. And then once we made the decision at the end of 2004 that we weren't going to run as a Pedder's team again, which was a business decision, money and growth decision at that time in the business. All of a sudden, the doors opened, and I didn't just get opportunities from Mitsubishi. This is unknown to many, but I got opportunities from Subaru as well. Alan Heafy approached me, and I actually tested the Evo 7, Ed's Evo 7 at the end of 2004, I think, and we're actually faster than Ed and Spencer on the road that they'd run. So that was
Where'd you test?
In Tassie.
Nice.
And then Alan said, would you like to come and join the team? And the first year I paid a little bit of money, so Pedder's did provide some finance, some support, because really Alan was doing it on the smell of an oily rag with Mitsubishi at the time. And then 05 we started off pretty poorly, but won Adelaide and came second, I think, in Tassie, and probably should have won Melbourne. And then moved to 2006, which we probably should have won that championship. We were the fastest, I believe. Simon might say otherwise, I think, but we were the fastest car. We just got unlucky with some turbo issues and some other issues. And then at the end of 2006, Steve Glennie was my teammate. We had Christmas breakup, and then 6 days later, Mitsubishi pulled the pin. And then, ironically, I had an offer from Subaru that I turned down to stay with Mitsubishi, and then the Subaru opportunity went elsewhere.
Crazy. How do you frame all of that now? I mean, you've talked about being ultra close in 06, and then opportunities that through circumstance, I mean, maybe we might have sensed that Mitsubishi were a bit borderline, but would they really go? And then obviously the Subaru thing. How did you frame all that at the end of it?
Look, I think if you go through life and your one downside is loyalty, that's a pretty good thing. So,
hell yeah.
So I think my thing was loyalty. Particularly Alan. I got a lot of time for Alan Heafy. He put his head on the block, particularly after I crashed a couple of cars early in 2005, and I know that he said to the Mitsubishi guys, just have some faith and patience with this guy. I've got some trust in him, and he did. So I wasn't going anywhere, and I was really excited about Steve coming on to the team. He's unlucky, because he had that opportunity. He was very fast in Adelaide that year, and that was going to be 07 was going to be a fantastic year, having a teammate for the first time, and unfortunately it got pulled from under us.
Crazy. There's, in a short time frame after, an opportunity emerges in the Asia Pacific Rally Championship for you. I think Katsu Taguchi was your teammate. Yep. You're with MRF and so on. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, really, really good. Again, a new experience. So left-hand drive for the first time. Still running a H-pattern box, which I just didn't get my head around, and ended up buying a lot of gearboxes because I just was too aggressive and too 6'3" and 95 kilos on the gearbox didn't help out. But from an experience point of view, Katsu was fantastic. Race Talk that ran the team and Lane and the team were really great to work with, and hot events like just crazy hot. Indonesia and Malaysia, and then it'd rain in Malaysia, and it was just ridiculous. Didn't do fantastically well from a results point of view. Cody and that team, Motor Image team, were in that as well. So it was a pretty good championship. It was fantastic from an experience point of view. It did ground me. It's sort of like you've gone from a big fish, small pond into the Asia Pacific,
yeah.
and it was certainly eye-opening.
Also, did you get during this time? Later on, you'd go in 2015 and do some stuff in WRC too. But did other things potentially come on the radar in this period? Was it like, maybe we could go and do this, or did stuff like that happen? Yeah,
post 06. Again, we talk about regrets, and I know you shouldn't have regrets, but you do. Is that was the opportunity I had to go and do PWRC. I should have taken the opportunity to, then I was 30, which I reckon is the sort of nice age. I think I probably then was driving the best that I did. We went and did Rally New Zealand in 07 in a trading post car, and we put all eggs in one basket to go and do that. And unfortunately, whether the spectators did it or someone did it, there was just one corner which was out of character, slippery, and literally us and I think 6 other cars around us slipped off, and we on stage 2 or 1 maybe. We got the car back, and if you take the times, there's the old thing. If you take the times over the 2 days, I think we were second fastest PWRC behind Johanan, and so again, speed good. We never won a stage, but I think we got about 5 seconds. So, the speed was there, and probably in hindsight, that was the time that I should have, bit the bullet. But at the same time, I think I'd just had my 3rd child then. So, three girls under the age of 4. Business going well. Mark just moved into the director's seat, so supporting him with the transition from dad to him.
Yep.
So lots of stuff going on. So no regrets, but that's the time that I really should have done. I should have done what I did in 15 back in 2007.
Yes. You are a very proud, very good dad, mate. And I think if you were to say, whether it's business success, what you've done in rallying and so on, you put a strong level of value in that, don't you? You were clearly always going to be in a rally car. That's obvious from when you were a youngster. But one thing you were always going to be at, mate, was a good dad.
Yeah, look, I often say that I only had 2 aims in life, and that was to be a good dad and a good rally driver. And I think I've done the third. Tick. I think, yeah. So, Caroline goes, "What about a good husband?" And I say, "I don't think that's possible with the expectations coming from that side." But I think I've ticked those boxes, and I got great family, great kids. But I grew up with great parents, and I think that's the secret is that genetic flow through of philosophy and learning and that sort of stuff. So I was given every opportunity in life and been very fortunate. So that's the way I treat my kids.
Do you think motorsport plays a part in helping that too in some respects? Because you often hear people that family stays together, they go karting, they do whatever, and there's often some real good stories out of perhaps stopping kids going a wrong direction, and so it's good like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think sport, squash motorsport for a second, but sport or interest, I think is
paramount.
Is paramount. Stop the kids from going down to the shopping centres and just getting bored. Because I think half the problem, these days is just boredom with kids and get them off the phones and that sort of stuff, and have interest and passion, have something that they can wake up in the morning and try and aspire to. And I think motorsport for me is that. I've kept my kids a little bit away from motorsport, but they've all
okay with dad and husband doing that.
Well,
stuff,
they haven't. I haven't taken them for a ride in the car. So Caroline's been for a ride and she's done an event. That's probably another story if you want to go there. She still hates me for it.
Does she? Will she hate me for bringing the story up?
No. Well, maybe. But the four kids haven't gone for a ride, and I'm not sure if I want to. I've got very different kids, and I've got two of them, I reckon, that'll say, "Dad, you're an idiot, and why are you doing this?" And that's unsafe. And I've got two kids that might want to co-drive and might cost me $1 million a year. Yeah. No, I think back to the point. I think rallying has been amazing for my life and for my personality, and it's just been such a buzz, and I can't believe that I'm 49 and potentially it's coming to an end because I still feel like I'm 16.
Yeah. Keep doing it as long as it's fun, and we can talk about this as we go. What happened with Carolyn? What happened with Carolyn?
Well,
what happened?
Well, I'm trying to put this into 1 or 2 minutes, but it's difficult. At the end of 2001, we decided as a bit of a team thing that we'd do a state round, but we wouldn't do it in the rally cars. We'd do it in the reconnaissance cars. If you remember back then, we had Evo 1 pretty recce cars, which were pretty standard, had a roll cage and that sort of stuff. So Mark did. I'm not sure who Mark competed with as a co-driver, but I took Caroline, and she'd never done. It was pace noted. She'd never done pace notes before. She'd never co-driven before. She was her very, very first event. So we started, I think, car 2 behind a bloke called Darren Windus, who was pretty quick. Group A Subaru and sort of stuff, and we got through the first stage, and basically she was calling the notes, and I was saying next. So because she would just call out a line, and I'd say next, so that she didn't have to worry about timing. I was controlling the timing of the note coming out. We get to the end. And obviously we'd done all right that year in the ARC, and she thought I was pretty good and that sort of stuff. And I'm her husband, so therefore she thinks I'm pretty good most of the time. We get to the end of the first stage, and we're 7th. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, we're 7th? I expected to win. And I'm like, well, there's some fast guys here, and we're not in a great car. And to be honest, the notes aren't that great. So she sort of gave me that wife look, and she said, well, how do we sort of improve our pace? And I said, well, when I say next, don't pause. Like, you need to say next straight into it. So anyway, obviously her competitive, thing was the same as mine. So I think we ended up winning the next 9 stages, and we went into the last stage up by about 5 seconds. And I could be wrong, but let's go with that. Yeah. And then I come over a crest with about 3Ks to go on the last stage, going okay. And I see the bunting. She calls the note perfectly left. I go right. We lose the rally by 3 seconds. And I get to the end, and one of I'm not sure if it was Stewie Lister or one of those old sort of guys comes up to me and he goes, do you realise if you had have won this rally that she would have been the only co-driver in Victorian rallying history to go from grade 5 to grade 1 in one rally? So as it stands, if you look up the record books, Caroline Pedder is a grade 2 co-driver.
Is that right? and you half-torched her debut.
And I torched her. It was all my fault. So I'm grade 1 driver and she's a grade 2. So anyway, that's the story.
Cool story. You are a great student of the sport, mate. In talking with Glenn McNeil in the lead up to this and others, I was reminded of that. The underscoring that point. I mean, for example, I gather you can crunch numbers before the event comes out and figure out seedings and things like that, can't you?
Yeah. Numbers have always been my strength. So Mark's terrible with numbers but great with words. He reads books. and words are amazing. He's very good with English and letters and all that sort of stuff. I've read 4 books in my life. I think one of them's an autobiography or probably 3 of them are autobiographies, and one of them's a cartoon. Numbers are. I love numbers, and that's what I love to. That actually relaxes me.
Does it?
Yeah, so I'm probably more of a co-driver before the event than many co-drivers I've ever had. I remember Glenn, the first rally we ran with Glenn, I actually sent him the recce schedule, and he sort of pulled me up and he said, "Mate, how about I do the co-driving bit and you do the driving bit?" No worries. I don't take offence. It's just what I do. So
you're organised.
Yeah. So, and I think actually interesting talking to Harry Bates. Harry Bates is very similar as well. So, and he's got a pretty good co-driver as well. So he doesn't need to do it either.
Tell me about then the next level of detail in all of that. So are you, like, if we talked who won what championship and who was co-driving with who back then, can you remember all that stuff? Not that I'll test you, but I mean,
I've got a pretty good idea. I'm a pretty good historian, that sort of stuff. I couldn't tell you exactly who won the years and that sort of stuff, but if you threw out names and stuff, I'd certainly throw back cars and memories of those people and that sort of stuff. So yeah, as I said, I've always loved the Australian Rally Championship. I just think it's one of the most amazing things. It's an amazing championship. It's just steeped with so much history. And it's a bit like Pedder's, to be honest. It's a bit of a secret. Like it's just. You see what V8 supercars have done, and I don't think that rallying in this country will ever be that. But, geez, we're underplaying how great rallying is, and commercially we just haven't got there. And I don't think we've got there in the World Championship, really. I think there's so many opportunities that we don't grab, and so many stupid decisions that get made that cost this sport great commercial, limelight. Versus its other motorsport peers.
Great potential in it at the moment. I know we're trying lots of fresh and new things, and it's got a good vibe about it at the moment, the ARC, doesn't it?
Yes,
I think
it does.
It really does. Just in your organisation, your pre-planning and so on, you watch lots of videos,
Yep.
you're knee-deep on stuff around recce and things, aren't you?
Yeah, I try and, I've probably I don't get angry very often, but I get angry with my team when the videos don't work.
Really?
I think the videos are as important as shock settings and coil springs, because that learning ability after the event to dissect what you do and to go back next year and change that note or to talk to Glenn and say, hey, your timing was off. No, that never happens, but I wish it did.
But whatever the tuning is.
Whatever that tuning is, I think, that ability to continually learn. I'm 49, I'm still learning, and it's every day's a learning day. So, yeah, I've always been a perfectionist competitive. When you do the behavioural tests, that I'm high on competitive and perfectionist, which is positive, and lots of negatives in that. But, yeah, I actually get frustrated with drivers that aren't like that. I think there's a lot of people that have just wasted natural ability
that could apply more.
Particularly to the mental side and the preparation side, and don't watch the videos and that sort of stuff. I think that's absolutely crazy that they don't do that.
Have people come to you for that kind of almost mentoring guidance and advice, and have you helped in that regard?
I'd love to. I've had this conversation with Glenn, and we shake our heads as well. Is that a few have. Adrian Coppin is one. Aaron Windus a little bit. Will Orders back in the day was one. Yeah. I was okay at that. Obviously, Ed was my mentor, and spent a little bit of time with Ed. And Ed taught me pace notes and taught me that third gear corners are actually fifth. Another story if you want it. But yeah, it's. Kids don't do it, I've certainly offered it. I've certainly been open to it, but whether it's ego or competitiveness,
or even fear,
maybe. And maybe that's Glenn and I and Glenn Weston's and the older people's lot in life is to make sure that we pass those information down to the next level, and maybe because it's not. People aren't coming forward. Maybe we need to do it in a formal way. Maybe we need to do it in an academy or something like that, which formalises that. Because, I think when you look at
such a bank of knowledge, mate, such a wealth of knowledge.
and when you look at it from a world championship point of view, the Roving Pedders, the McRaes, and that sort of stuff, they're naturally fast. Don't get me wrong, but they're fast straight away because they've got 10, 15, 20 people behind them, helping them with notes, helping them with ice driving, helping them with sponsorship and that sort of stuff. It's no fluke. So again, it's frustrating that the young kids, don't come through.
I'm a huge believer, maybe for young ones listening, pick up the phone or find a way. Quite often it's not just the advice, it's actually the fact that you're prepared and hungry enough to go and chase that sort of stuff and garner the respect of these people that you can then draw on further down the line if you need to.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, let's as we progress here on your career path. I know there are times where perhaps business or whatever the decisions may have been that you either reduce the amount of events that you do, you maybe even sit on the sidelines for a little while. How difficult have those moments been when you have not been competing?
It's sort of, people have asked me that question, but difficult, but not difficult.
Okay.
I certainly do watch the events when I'm not there and assume where I would have been and why was that person so slow on that split, and I'll generally call someone that's at the event to ask them what's going on. But I think my brain's sort of very on and off. Once I've made a decision that I'm not doing it, I go off and do something else.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at that. I don't miss, even though I love rallying, I don't miss it when I'm not there, and I think that's because at the end of the day I've got a great life. It's rallying's not everything. It's almost the Scotty Scheffler conversation is that rallying's not everything for me because I've just got such a magnificent life in family and business and friends and that sort of stuff. So I love rallying, but I don't need it.
Okay. Do your bonds, like how much value do you place in the bond with the co-driver? And you've had some great ones along the way. I mean, you call up GMAC, Glenn McNeil in 2023, I think, didn't you? And away that. I mean, a guy with a huge amount of experience. He's not the only one that we can talk about there. And have you always run a 1 to 10 thing with those co-drivers system?
Yes. Yeah. So whether it be good luck or good management. The very first decision to go to Pace Notes, I and I'm not sure who I think it might have been Dad that said let's get Ed, because Ed, in my opinion, is the guru, the doyen of the 10 system and the steering wheel system, which is all about consistency and not perceiving what the road is going to do.
You use that in the recce car, mate.
So 1 to 10. I actually got 14 notes. I've got pluses and stuff, which has all been a Finland. I didn't have enough notes for Finland, so I've incorporated some more notes and changes
adapted
from that one event. But yeah, mate, the co-driving co-drivers are crucial. As I said before, I've actually got probably more respect for co-drivers than many of the drivers because I think I'm actually more a co-driver from a mentality point of view. I understand what they go through. I understand the importance of the pace notes and timing. And that sort of stuff, and I've had comments from co-drivers over the journey. Things like, "I'll slow down on recce if I know that I've made a note change that's going to require them to write quite a lot, rather than just continue driving and have them potentially stuff up or not be able to catch up." So, co-drivers are crucial. I mean, pace notes are. It's often been said, but I'm so pedantic and fanatical about pace notes that it's actually quite ridiculous.
But you accept that. You that's just how you're wired, isn't it?
And back to the videos, it's not uncommon for me, to spend a day just on one stage.
Really?
8 hours on a stage watching a video, and it's not uncommon for me to spend 2 business weeks on a rally watching videos.
Does it become like film in your mind then in some ways? Or?
It's not just for the remembering. I mean, that's certainly part of it. And I think actually remembering a road can have its pros and its cons. It's just picking up detail. It's just, it's looking both at last year's recce, this year's roads, and also last year's events, and just picking up detail and just making sure that when you get into that car, because it's an intense environment, that in your brain that you've done everything that you possibly can to go down this road as fast and safe as you can.
Yeah, you mentioned Ed Ordynski there before. Let's come back to that third gear versus fifth gear story. That sounds like a great story. When Dino was on, he talked about riding with him somewhere, and Mr. Group N, how good he was, but it opened Dean's eyes to just how much you can push those Group N machines, what he could do. So tell me what your yarn is. Here.
Happy birthday to Ed. I think he was 70 this week. So happy birthday, Ed man. Look, the story goes. When we first learnt to do testing, and when I was going from the Victorian Championship into the National Championship, so Ed was obviously exceptionally good at that point. I think he'd already run 5 or 6 Rally Australia, so he was pretty handy. And I was 22-year-old cocky kid that had just won, 23-year-old that had just won his second Victorian Championship. So I thought I was pretty good. And I took him to a place called Coles Creek Road in Talangi, which we'd use as our test road quite a lot. And I thought I was, the benchmark time. Anyway,
I've got this.
And I took Ed for a ride, and he said, "Yeah, it's not bad, And we did pace notes, and I'd called a particular corner down the bottom halfway through, a 6 right, and he goes, so in my language that's 3rd gear, and I said, yeah, and he goes, I reckon that's 5th. And I just went, mate, there is no way in hell that corner is 5th gear. Anyway, he said, well, I'll show you. So my time was at 2:32. So I'm guessing. Yeah. He jumps in my car, so never driven this car before, and I sit next to him. He did a couple of runs of pace notes, so I'm not calling notes, right? So, but he knows the road because he's done 2 runs of it. Yeah. He did 2:29 first up, including that corner. His 5th. And then by the end of the day, I got down to a 2:26, and guess what? That corner was 5th gear. And that day, I put down 50% of my pace. Just that sheer ability to look at a corner and go, no. If the note is saying it was actually an 8, I downgraded it and he said never downgrade. It's an 8, isn't it? I said, yep. It's 5th gear. So I put that day down to 50% of my success in my career.
Amazing.
And I don't think I've ever told Ed that, so I hope he's listening.
That's a lovely birthday present for him. I mean, he's such an amazing bank of knowledge. Have there been others along the way that have maybe given you little bits of advice?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you've got to be careful. Foss and Ball gives you lots of advice, but it's different. Simon Evans is the other way as well. They're both great people, obviously. I mean, Bill Orders is a big part of my life, and obviously no longer with us, unfortunately. Dad, big part. My brother Mark. Yeah. But in terms of competitors, probably the standout one would be Ed. Dean Herridge. Too nice to be a rally driver. Dino, and then most recently Harry. The worst thing about competing with Harry is he's such a nice guy. You want to hate the guy, but we often get out of the car and he'll beat me on a stage or vice versa, and we're high fiving each other. And
love it.
GMAT can't work it out. We're giving cuddles to Coral and that sort of stuff. And then Hayden hasn't worked that out yet. He still needs to come to the cuddles and high fives. I think we'll get him there.
You'll dial that euro out of him, won't you? You run at one point the ARC. You are the boss of the championship. Tell me how that came about, and what was it like? Because all of a sudden, Crompo uses that line about poacher turned gamekeeper. You're on the other side, then, aren't you? You've been competitor, but now you're guiding the show. You're guiding the series. What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, it came about really because I had a huge crash in 2010.
Which we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I hit a tree at about 155 or something like that, 160 k's an hour straight on. So very fortunate to be here. And my 4th child then was 2 weeks old. So poor Kaz had 5 kids to look after for about 6 months. And I had some bad diagnosis. So I was actually walking around on a broken ankle for about 6 months. So whilst the knee repaired. So really the recuperation took longer than what it did, both physically and mentally and family, those 3 things. And then I just love the sport so much. I just, the thought of not competing was whatever, but the thought of not being involved in rallying, and I think also the combination, as I said before, the frustration that this sport isn't anywhere near what it should be. Like 2010 was an okay year. I think it was me and Simon and a few others, but it was just it was just an incredible sport. It wasn't being commercialised. So I thought, well, geez, no one else is going to do it, and obviously, I thought I'll have a crack. And I had a chat to Ben Rainsford, who was the chairman of the ARC, and Arcom and Cole Trinder at the time, and I said, look, I want to have a crack at this. I'm going to spend less time at Pedder's and have a little bit of a crack at this, but I need your support. I'm going to come up with some crazy stuff, and go from there. So, essentially from, I think, 2000, and look, Katie Phillips was an amazing, still is.
Yeah, she's still here now.
Help for me in that period as well, along with a lot of other people, Ross Tapper and those sort of people, backed me. And then, so we introduced unrestricted, we introduced side-by-sides, we got Bosch as a naming rights sponsor. I mean, we had $1 million of sponsorship in 2012, for a sport that, was, and then the two-wheel drive thing really started as a result of that, because I grew up in the manufacturer era. People don't realise how important manufacturers are because they just haven't been in that era. They are seriously, very, very important in this sport, like they are in supercars. So I thought, well, the Evo's dead, the WRX is dead. What's next? And then obviously Honda are in it. They were a big supporter, and I just started to tap some doors. Went and spoke to Mazda, went and spoke to Renault, went and spoke to Citroen, Nissan, lots of other Ford, lots of other people, Holden, and there was some genuine interest there. We didn't get all those people, and at the same time we did SUVs as well, which was pretty crazy as well. So, and then Calder Park was around in the Australian Championship in 2012, and it rained had 85 mil of rain.
But in essence, what you were trying to do there, which is bring the people to, or the event to the people.
Probably went too fast, too quick. Taking some of the older rally people on the ride was a bit of a journey, a bit similar to franchising actually. At Pedder's, taking people for a ride on the journey was a bit difficult, but I'm still pretty proud of what we were able to achieve, and but at the same time, Adrian Coppin's taken the mantle, and he is just doing such an amazing job. Along the same lines, is just not taking no for an answer and putting a bit of passion back into it.
It was, you sort of lent into that a minute ago. Politics and maybe sometimes views that are very, let's call it traditionalist, where you're locked onto and maybe not open to new ideas. Some of that stuff tough to navigate, because it's all of a sudden, it's not Pedder's, it's your passion, your love, but your that can be quite that can take a lot of the passion out of it for you when you're trying to crest those humps, mate, can't it?
Yeah, it can. Like dealing with volunteers, is interesting.
But we need them.
100%. And just the way, and this is not a shot at Motorsports Australia. I think they do a good job. But in rallying, their model is set up for looking after the base level. Their whole model, financial model, is about membership. So not that they don't care about the top end, but financially they don't. They're worried about the club competitor and that sort of stuff. So trying to run a commercial model whilst having people that really just want to turn up and have some fun, you've having to mix those together is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to do. I think we found a way to do that. I'm very proud of the fact that of that $1 million that we ended up getting, obviously a lot of that went to TV and paying for all the things that we needed to pay for. But we gave a lot of money back to the events. Which came from that franchising model, that we all win together. But I think back to the original question, I've always been a big believer in leadership is about action and about passion. If you're passionate about something, generally speaking, you can get people around to your way of thinking. As soon as you take a blip in that passion and that action. That's when you let yourself down. So
because they've seen that, then haven't they?
They've seen that, yeah. So just I just didn't take no for an answer. As I said, had great support, had a crack, and what came out the other side, I hope, was a better championship.
Yeah, don't play that down. I think Mark sort of said to me that maybe deep down you feel a little bit because. It required a huge amount of commitment, a huge amount of time, and you absolutely dedicated yourself to that. But in the same breath, Pedder's is doing good things, and you sort of at the end of the day had to make a choice, mate, didn't you? Is that right? At the end of that chapter, so to speak.
Yeah, and look, essentially, and full credit to Mark and Dad for sort of allowing me to do that. And I'm putting, you can't see this on radio, but I'm putting my fingers
inverted
up,
commas,
inverted commas. But Mark and Dad ran the business essentially. Like I kept an eye on it, but really I took 2 years away from the business, so to speak, to focus on running a better Australian Championship. So, as I said, that's my personality. I can't do things by halves, particularly when I'm passionate about things. Caroline will tell you that I do lots of things by halves, by the way, but certainly things that I'm passionate about. Once I put my mind to it, and once particularly people tell me I can't do it or it's not going to work,
let's find a way. We'll come to the two-wheel drive era in a minute because it's a very important part of your career, and that you talked about the foundations leading into that a minute ago. But I'm glad you've been okay to talk a little bit about the crash. I wasn't sure if you would want to do that. You would want to do that today. I mean, you had success on those roads. They are fast, addictive, really cool roads there. But it's a very memorable crash for a lot of people, and you especially. Take us, if you can, to that day and what unfolded.
Yeah, well, I mean, the overarching summary is if you play with fire, sometimes you're going to get burnt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the crash started months before. Really, we were contesting the Australian Championship against a guy that I rate probably as one of the best that we've had, which is Simon Evans.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a very healthy respect for each other, but a very healthy rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't want to lose to me, and I certainly didn't want to lose to him. And we'd won the first two rallies, so we beat him in Tasmania and we beat him in Forest Rally comfortably both times. And then we got to get to Coffs Harbour. I think we were running about neck and neck there. I'd have to check. Simon will tell me. And I had a crash, and that sort of put the championship. I think I might have still been leading, or just he was leading, but probably in hindsight put a little bit of pressure. And then I'm not sure whether Simon put the illegal engine in or whatever he did for South Australia. That's a joke. Obviously he didn't. He just got better and faster. He did a really good job on Saturday in South Australia, and he won that quite comfortably. So I went into stage one on Sunday, a very brisk morning. Place like Chalks Road's the name, just outside of Mount Pleasant. Stage incredibly fast, very tree lined. They don't run the stage anymore because it's just too fast, too dangerous.
Yep.
Big gum trees, all the things that you love about rallying and you hate about rallying at the same time, and particularly South Australia. We take off. I'm car one at that point. Simon's the car behind me. I think it was about 2 corners, so it's about a 500 metre straight left-hander, 500 metre straight right-hander. I come around the right-hander at about 160, so fifth gear, and I just ran wide. I literally just ran wide, hit a little berm. In the berm was a tree root from the tree, which was quite a long way from the berm. I break the left-hand rear suspension, and it literally just turns me directly right into the tree, which was about 8 metres from the first impact, and I hit a gum tree probably the size of the car, as in the width of the car, straight in the middle of the car. I get knocked out. Co-driver Johnny Mortimer gets knocked out. I come to. My first instinct was the car's on fire, because the radiator's obviously somewhere back in my lap somewhere, smoking and obviously cold morning. So the first thing you do is there's the smell and the steam and the smoke. I go to open the door. That's not going to work because the door's now crashed and that sort of stuff and jammed. So John comes to a little bit after me. He's fine. A little bit of whiplash. He can get out. He gets out. He obviously, this is pre-rally safe days. So Simon's now coming down the road at mark factor 10. No doubt into that corner as fast as I've gone. So fortunately, he sees my marks and slows down before he sees John. So again, I'm not sure how he's done that. He comes to me. I'm stuck in the car. I realise at this point I don't realise what's happened to me still.
You can feel your legs and stuff?
I can feel my legs. I looked down and my kneecap came out of my skin. So it's sort of sitting on my thigh, my right kneecap. So I thought that's not good. But the body takes over, no pain, really. But mainly the left ankle. The left ankle was very, very sore, and I can't get the left ankle past the brake pedal because it's been mangled and snaps like that. So literally, I just sit there and I was actually relatively calm. John Morton might tell you a different story, but my recollection is I'm quite calm. And then obviously, it all happened. The medics say Simon and Sue did a great job. Sue stayed with me and held my hand. I got ketamine injected into me, which was really, really cool. And then got a helicopter out and had operations at Royal Adelaide, and then obviously took, as I said, got some misdiagnosis and took a long time to recover. Both physically and mentally.
Did you frame it like that's it? I'm not getting back in the car, or what'd you do?
You go through stages. Certainly. And full credit to people like Simon that get back from their accidents straight away, and Valentino Rossi's and those crazy people that do it a week later. I couldn't. I wasn't ready for probably at least 6 months, I reckon, mentally and probably physically more like a year, really, because the ankle took forever to gain some strength and be able to brake properly and accelerate properly and not get cramps and all that sort of stuff. So. It was a very interesting time, and obviously, as I said before, 4 kids, and that played into it, and the business and the family and that sort of stuff. That could have been very easily the end of my career for sure. Did
you get help? Just sort of, because you're back, you're fast, all that sort of stuff now. And I'll come to the moment where I think you made the decision to come back. But when you think about that stuff, you've got to clearly. You've just given me great detail in what transpired in that crash. You can't relive that. You can't bring that back, can you? Did you have to deal with that in some way?
I haven't watched the in-car. Mark's got it on his phone.
Does he?
Yeah. And he's often, we've had a few drinks, and he's, come on, let's watch it. No, I don't want to watch it. Okay. Don't want to watch it. So I'm not sure what that means, but I don't want to watch it. No, it was a big crash. I'm not. If we had release safe now, the G-forces would have been crazy. The car was actually not written off, but it should have, almost could have been. Very lucky that it wasn't. Essentially, I've seen the photos of the car, and there was no car past the windscreen, essentially. So it was a seriously big crash, and it, as I said, it took me a while to get through, but physically took longer than mental.
Mark says, I think he may have been competing.
He was.
You might have been with his wife, and you were watching somewhere, and you get the bug again. Is that right? I'll paraphrase there. So I don't know what's transpired there. It was when it may have been a moment of realisation that you were missing it, and you wanted to get back behind the wheel.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it was. Obviously, I'd ran the championship for a bit, and. Yeah, I was standing with, it might have been Miff, might have been Mark's wife and a few others or whatever, and it was Eli. Actually.
Was it? Yeah.
The little Jazzers, or maybe it was a Civic, and I'd watched the quick Group N guys come through, and I forget who was running those, Bowden, I think maybe those sort of guys, driving those things, unrestricted cars and that sort of stuff, and then I could hear this thing coming through the forest, and Eli drove that thing really well. Very aggressive, and his last name's Evans. What hope has he got? And I just went, ooh, and then that tingle that you get, that tingle that I got when I was 2 years old, standing at the mine shaft, I got that back, and then from pretty much there, I went home and had the very difficult conversation with my wife, and she said, after weeks, no, straight away, pretty much, go and do what you want to do, and then obviously the Renault thing started.
So let's go with that. Where did you track that car down? Why did that sort of? That was for me. I know it doesn't have the raw top speed of an Evo and maybe the cornering performance and everything that the R5 cars and Rally 2-spec cars offer and so on. But they sounded so sweet, those things at full noise, and man, you could brake late in them, couldn't you?
Probably the best car that I've ever driven.
Really?
In terms of to my personality, perfectionist and wanting to get the most out of a car that just should not be driven. It was, so the story is we went over to Paris, myself and Lane Heenan from Race Talk, and Dale Moscott, and we went for a tour of Renault, because obviously you had the two choices. You could go a G2 car, which was basically a hand-built proper two-wheel drive thing, and the regs were quite free in that thing. Or you could just go and get an R3 car, which was sort of like a Group N plus version of the way of going about it. So I'd sort of grown up with the easy option, and to be honest, time was against us, and we didn't. I just thought it'd be pretty cool to run something from overseas, and so we did. We went over and got an R3 Renault from Renault Sport in Paris, and I think they'd made 500 cars and 482 of them were tarmac. So to the point where, again, another funny story, the first test that we did in Marysville, which not that long before that had some bushfire issues. Yeah. We realised after a couple of runs that the underbody was wooden, because obviously on tarmac
doesn't matter,
right? So we thought, jeepers creepers, thank God we didn't put it off the road or that sort of stuff, because that would have been a bad day for the Marysville residents again, unfortunately. But yeah, we brought that car back, and we ran it as an R3 car in the first year, 2013, with Tommy Wilde and the Race Talk team, and it was a very basic front-wheel drive car. It had 40 or 50 horsepower, probably less than the Hondas, and it was a car that was built to a specification of about $150,000. So very much Group N plus, running against Eli in the Honda, full Mugen engine, heat-driven front-wheel drive cars. So again, when you look back at it now, I thought I was a chance, but in reality, I wasn't. And then obviously things changed in 2014.
What did it mean to win that for you?
Oh, that was I mean, you saw the vision with Dino. Dino cried more than me, by the way. I'm just putting it out there.
He was new to television at this stage, and I think he moved in to interview you and feeling green, but this, both of you were caught up in the emotion of what that really meant to you, weren't you?
As I said at the start, I only ever wanted two things in my life, and that was to have kids and to win the Australian Rally Championship. So that was very, very special, and special to have Dino there, special to have all my family there, special to have Mark competing in the event. He was about 6 minutes behind me, so I sort of was a mess, and then I recovered myself, and then I saw Mark, and then I was a mess again. But yeah, that was just I mean, it was incredibly special, and it's not the best day of my life, but it's pretty
there.
close.
Yeah. Did you keep that car?
Yeah, still got it.
Have you?
Yeah, still got it. It's had an engine blow up about 6 months ago. So, but we're potentially going to run it in a state round later on in the year.
Unreal.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Great thing that you did there, mate. And clearly, then the fire is a little bit lit for the missed window on some international stuff. So in 2015, you embark on Portugal and Finland. Tell us about bolting that together, when you thought you would want to do that and why you'd want to do that and so on.
Oh, look, it was a combination of an itch, obviously, again, ego. You thought you've won the championship. What's next? To me, multiple Australian championship doesn't, that's a great thing, and I'd love to win another one, but I think once you've won one, don't be greedy. So,
you'd completed that mission.
I'd sort of completed that, and I thought, what's next? And I'd sort of always had that, am I good enough? Where do I rank? I want to go and challenge myself. So...
that's again your nature, basically.
Yeah, it is my nature a little bit. And commercially also, Pedder's had started to get some wins internationally, and we had some export opportunities, which sort of, I'm sort of stretching at the truth a little bit there, but it certainly didn't pay for itself. But there was a good opportunity to do some stuff over in Europe, particularly around the rallying. So we went to M Sport. We went to Malcolm Wilson and spoke to him about a Ford
Fiesta.
Unfortunately, it was too expensive to go with M Sport, so we went with a company, offshoot company of theirs that were running Fords called RMC in Spain. In hindsight, we probably did. We went in there too cocky, and we did some stuff a bit cheaply. We got a deal with DMAC tyres, which ultimately weren't as good as the Michelin. The RMC card certainly wasn't a rocket ship. And as I found out, there's two types of Fiestas. There's the customer one and the non-customer one, or the M Sport one, which I was to find out later on. So it was an unbelievable experience. It was just a dream come true. My first event was Portugal. Unfortunately, we rolled the car in the first day, but we did get an opportunity to come back the following year and do Portugal properly. But essentially, the first couple of rallies, I really struggled. I struggled with the car, the conditions, and again, regrets. My personality got in the way, and I was worried about split times and competing and where was I coming and that sort of stuff. And I wasn't taking in the fact that I've made it. I've got to where I want to go.
To be in the moment,
just enjoy it.
Too, yeah.
So we got to Finland. I'd done 3 events or 4 events and just had terrible results and that sort of stuff because I was trying too hard. I was so pent up with the competitiveness, and I said to Dale, co-driver at the time, Dale Muscat, I said, mate, I don't care. I'm not going to let that get in the way of Finland. Finland's the holy grail. It's the Monaco Grand Prix of rallying. I'm just going to go there and have some fun.
Mate, that's great. That's tapping back into what the Pedder's team was all about back in the day.
And it's tapping back into that kid that was driving that blue cart down the driveway, right? That's why I'm there. So that's what I took into Finland in 2015. And we ended up, fourth WRC2. Someone told me, and I'm not sure if it's still the fact, but it's the best debut by a non-European ever in Finland.
That's cool.
But my God, Finland. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Tell people, because, there's some people that I know that are listeners of the program that are heading over soon to go and spectate. I think Coral and Mark Taylor went when they were younger and sort of piggyback with some cameramen. And they're like it is... To draw a parallel, it is a Spa of Formula One. It is a Bathurst of touring car racing and more, mate, isn't it?
The only way I can explain it to someone that's not involved in rallying is imagine going to the AFL Grand Final in the forest, because that's what it's like. It's basically a Collingwood Carlton game at the MCG.
Yeah.
That's the passion.
Yep.
The people, the roads obviously are ridiculous, and it's just crazy jumps and that sort of stuff. Like you're doing stages. I think Owen Poyer is, whatever it is, 25k long, but the Terra Trip says 24 because you're in the air for a kilometre, which is nuts. Crazy. But it's the people. It's the I missed a pace note on a jump in a stage called Yukayavi. It's a double jump. The first crest is not a jump. The second crest definitely is a jump, and I stuffed it up. I thought there was 3 crests, and I didn't brake for the jump, and we went 56 metres. Ogier went 54, and I got back into the service at the midday service. Car was actually all right. It actually landed pretty good. Dale winced anyway. I got back in the midday service, and I'm going to my service bay. And I couldn't get into my service bay because literally there was 250 fans with their horns and that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden I was the local cult hero. Who's this crazy...
Because of the jump.
Who's this crazy bloke that didn't lift over the Yukiyavi jump.
Kangaroo!
First time. It definitely wasn't on purpose. Yeah. But that was Finland. That's the atmosphere. And, I still put that would be my best ever result, in terms of what I was up against. The fact that I'd never been there before... The fact that I'm so proud of my pace notes, and I think that event you have to have great pace notes. I'm proud of the fact that I can get onto stages first time and do a good time. So all of that sort of bundled in to why that's probably, if you ask me, that's probably the best result I've ever had.
That's lovely. Great yarn. What about those cars? What they like to drive?
Oh man, yeah. I'm driving them now. Yeah, it's just, they're not sharp. They're not. Hugely powerful. People can take people for a ride. They go, oof, it's got some torque, but geez, they're not. They're only 280 horsepower at the end of the day, but they're 0 to 100 in 4.5 seconds on gravel. It's just out of a 1.6 litre turbo with a 32 mil. With basically 33% of the air taken out of the intake in the turbo from a normal standard car. So crazy. Batesy hasn't. I was speaking to Neil Bates yesterday, or actually yesterday, and I said, "When are you going to drive? When are you going to have a drive of the boys' car?" And he goes, "Oh, they actually gave me a present for my birthday, and it's a drive in my car." I said, "Oh, geez, the kids are Kids are good these days, aren't they? And he said, well, what are they like? And I said, well, imagine driving a rally car that does everything you want it to do every time you ask it to do it. I said, that's what driving these cars is you turn and it turns and it brakes and sort of stuff. But obviously the window is very, very small. Is that, particularly this year, obviously with Hayden and Harry going pretty quick, the speeds are quite insane. I think, the WRC2 times prove it is we're essentially 5 years slower than the outright times. So, we're basically doing times now that what the outright time was in 2020, which is a little bit frightening.
Yeah. I mean, and as we talk here, there's kind of a groundswell of potential around WRC maybe heading that path. I mean, if you could imagine all those manufacturers, hot kids, fast youngsters coming through, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Well, that's what rallying's all about, isn't it? Like, when I think about my passion for the Australian Rally Championship and my history and experience and what I love about the sport, I love that guy that's car 28 that's winning the rally, or Huey Bell, mixing stages with Ari Vartan when he comes over and that sort of stuff. Well, you can't do that now. Unless you're prepared to spend, $10 million on a season and go and give Malcolm a big check for $10 million. You can't do it because you also can't turn up with one event. You can't just expect to be a good driver and go, here's $500,000. I want to go and compete in a WRC 1 car, because you're just not going to do it any justice. But having a Rally 2 Plus category, you've got 2,000 cars, 3,000 cars out there in the world that literally, if that happened tomorrow, it'd be oversubscribed in an hour, that event. Like you'd have to make sure that you know when the exact entry list was coming out, because you would not get a spot after an hour. And you'd have literally probably 40 or 50 drivers that could win stages. The cream's always going to rise to the top. Tanak's always going to be fast. OG's always going to be fast. Solberg's always going to be fast. But, Harry Bates or Scott Pedder on a stage car 20, maybe a chance.
Really cool. Taylor Gill's over there, batting really hard, doing some good things there at the moment. It would be nice to think, if that did happen, that we could pluck someone out of the Australian Championship and give them a crack at the world stage.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? And we've done a great job, I think, with the blacktop stuff. Obviously Piastris and Lounsers and Van Gisbergens and those sort of people, and Webbers, whatever. I've missed a lot of them, but we haven't done that with rallying. Obviously Atkinson is our closest opportunity, and we've had Duncanons and those sort of things, but we just haven't had that Hayden Padden person yet, or that Piastri person yet. Dan Ricciardo, those sort of people. So it'd be nice to have that same thing with the sport that I love, for sure. One
thing in jumping ahead to your return to the sport from the crash and so on that Mark spoke to me about was the first proper event back, a tarmac event too, and you were like you went like a cut cat straight away too.
No,
right?
It was actually, if you talk about my proudest moment in rallying, in 2003, so the first event that we ran in the Clio. So I'd never driven a front wheel drive car before. Obviously, I had the demons of 2010 crash. So round 1, Canberra, Eli's running, Brendo's running in the Mazda. Elfyn Evans comes over and runs with
Adrian brought him over
a Fiesta R2 car. So talk about expectation, nerves, and that sort of stuff. We actually won that day. So we won the first day in Canberra. Back, we got smoked on the first stage. I think we were 6th or 7th, and I sort of got out of the car and I sort of got the mirror out and said, "Scott, come on." And I said to Dale, I said, "I'm going to push in here," and it was the mineshaft stage, and we took 18 seconds out of, or 15 or 18 seconds out of Eli in that stage, and that set the win up for the day. So that was proud, because that mental journey, physical journey, fact that I've never driven a front wheel drive car.
You put a nice bookend on that, mate.
Yeah, that was really nice. Very much up there with Finland, for sure.
Well done. I'm glad you bring up Elfyn Evans, because one aspect of the journey around WRC2 that you perhaps didn't allude to is that you're up against people like him in this phase, and you're showing your skill again. I mean, he's a star of the WRC.
Yeah, we had some, particularly 15 was the last year of the regional rally car, where we had R5 cars with regional cars. So the regional car was a world rally car with a smaller restrictor, very much unfair. So we had Nassau Latia and guys like that still in those cars. And then we had, Lappy and Tiedemann in factory Skodas. And we had Elfin in the factory Ford. So, and we had, lots of national champions. I remember catching up with Dennis Juraday, was running for a young kid. It was obviously Didier Oriol's co-driver back in the day, and he was running with a young kid. And I was sort of looking at the times in Finland, and he comes over to me and he goes, "Who are you?" And introduced himself, and he goes, "You're running very well." And I think it was Owen Poyer the first run through, and I'd run 7th the first time through, and I was a bit down in the mouth about running 7th, which is an insight into my personality. Yeah. And Dennis is like, "Are you okay?" He goes, so I'm just a bit annoyed about my pace in there, and he pulls out his phone, and he says, "The guy behind you is a Swedish national champion. The guy behind him is a Norwegian national champion. The guy behind him is a French national champion. The guy behind that is a Spanish." And he went down the list, and he goes, "Mate, you're doing all right." So
if you're ahead of Norwegians and Swiss on those roads there, that's damn good.
So that's good.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. The next part of telling your story, if we were doing it in a timeline, comes to your role as the head of Pedders. But I want to break back a bit and tell for people that are listening a bit more of the Pedder story, because they're sort of in parallel here. I mean, firstly, as you and I sit here, it's a couple of key milestones this year for the company, isn't it? I mean, 75 years, I think 50 years, as you got proudly around on your thing, and supporting rallying and so on. I mean, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, the Pedders story, 75 years. So 1950, it started off as my grandfather started it, who was a World War II white metal welder. So for those that don't know, aluminium particularly is very difficult to weld. So he learned his craft in the Air Force, so welding planes together and that sort of stuff, and then came out and was welding pots and pans. So Pedder's die-cast welding service started on August the 1st, 1950. So we're not only a couple of weeks away from the official celebration there next Friday, I believe.
Yep.
And then really out of a bit of luck, back in those days, the English cars that were coming over to Australia had aluminium shock absorbers in them, and obviously our roads were a bit trickier, than a bit tougher, and a bit rougher than the British roads. So the shock absorbers were bursting, and then he got a name for being able to weld these things up, and then obviously the business grew from there, from one person to two people to ending up being 30 people in a shed in Malvern and then Moorabbin, essentially, fixing shock absorbers and welding them back up and sending them out there, and then we ended up getting quite a lot of interest, or Roy in particular, and Dad had started joining the business then.
Roy's your grandfather, Ron's your dad.
Roy's my grandfather, Ron's my dad, yeah. So he started in the business as well, and we got a lot of interest from motorsport and people like that looked at us as a way of retuning their shock absorbers, is having harder shock absorbers. So one of the great stories of Pedders is that there was two banana boxes on the floor of the reconditioning business. One had no paint, and the other one. So one was for the standard replacement. Don't change the valving.
Yep.
And the other one was for the motorsport harder valving one. So someone said the other day, well, one day we need to identify which ones, because once they're sealed up, you don't know whether it's firm or soft, right? So someone said, how are we going to identify the hard ones from the not? And someone said, well, why don't we put a bit of red paint on the hard ones? And that's where Pedder's red, or the red Pedders, and then obviously then the Bull came about. Is our upgrade product is red. So and then Dad took over in the mid 70s, and that's where he decided that he wanted new product. And then after that, franchising, big part of the business.
You were, correct me if I'm wrong here, you were only within a few years of McDonald's sort of pioneering that whole franchise model, weren't you?
Yeah, I think McDonald's first was sort of early 70s, and we had our first franchise in 79. Really apart in the automotive space, apart from probably some of the dealerships and maybe Midas around that time, we were one of the very first, or Dad was very the first pioneers in franchising. And interesting that the first 2 franchisees we have were all motorsport people.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just people we'd met from rallying. So, and that continued. That's been a massive trend throughout the journey. So,
so what are you today in terms of size? Tell people about that.
Yeah, so we're about 125 outlets around Australia. So 75 of those are full stores, and we've got about 50 sort of regional country dealerships. We export to many countries throughout the world, 50 odd countries. Turnovers of our business is about $75 million a year. Across the whole group's about 200. I mean, include all the stores as well. So we're sort of not huge, but we're certainly not small. But it's a very proud, still family owned. We've just put on a new CEO. So the first time that
Scott
we've had
Manelli.
Scott Manelli. So he's week 5 through his induction.
Is he?
So he officially takes over on the 1st of August, which is a bit of a milestone period. So that technically gives me a bit more time to do some rallying.
Nice. The motorsport connection will stay, and the thing I love about it, mate, is you've kept it in different areas too. I mean, you partner with Oscar Fiorinotto a few years ago. You have a connection with supercars as well, don't you? So.
Yeah, I mean, motorsport's always been a big part of our lives, but it's generally always been rallying, up until 2000s, when I stepped into the role of marketing. And we'd been doing all the normal stuff, radio, TV, Yellow Pages back then. For those young
like
people, that's like Google but on paper. Yes. And then really through again a motorsport connection, Luke Wilson, who had worked for IMG, I think back in the day when they were running the Australian Championship. He'd moved to SEL, which was then running supercars under Tony Cochran, and we just caught up and started chatting and that sort of stuff. And Luke, being the sort of opportunistic person that he is, said, "Why don't you be involved in V8 supercars? It's the perfect thing." Well, da-da-da. So what does that look like? And anyway, he put together a proposal for me around the safety car, I think it was back in the day, and that sort of stuff. And actually, interestingly, our relationship with supercars started a bit before that. Is that we did some trade events in 2005. Crompton will kill me if I get that wrong. 5, I think. And we weren't involved with Crompton, or we weren't involved with supercars from an official capacity, but I think we got the details through Ned, through
Craig Kelly. Yep.
And who was managing Crompo at the time, I think, and Scafie. And we went, well, we're going to do these trade events. We need a name. Just talk about that. So we got Crompo to host it, and we got Todd Kelly, Rick Kelly, Scafie, Johnny Bow, I reckon, was there, a few others, to do some stuff around the country, do these events around the country. And that's where our relationship with Neil Crompton started, which was a massive part of how we got into supercars, obviously. Crompo's been a part of the Pedders family for 20 years. And you and I both share our opinions of that great man.
He's a great fellow, and they're still involved, I think, now, aren't they, through Airtime Media with
Correct.
Chad and
correct.
and what they're doing on the side there. Couple of little things there just around the motorsport connection. Firstly, with the ARC this year, so you have run in conjunction with lots of the rounds, things that bring people to it's experiential. It helps from a training point of view and all sorts, doesn't it? So
yeah, and again, back to frustrations about rallying is that Mark and I, when we sort of decided, or when I decided really to come back and do the Australian Championship again after a bit of a break, 7-year break, we sort of said, why don't we just actually have a crack at doing this commercially? Like we've sort of hidden rallying a little bit through the business. It's sort of been a little bit of a rich boy sort of thing that we didn't want to sort of portray, and we hadn't really done
leveraged it properly.
That's exactly the word. Thank you for that. So and with our big thing at the moment is impacts of weight. Utes and cars that that need to be upgraded because they're heavy. We track speed in a car. The police will pull you over if you're 10 k's an hour loader. But weights are, from an engineering standpoint, just as important, if potentially more than speed is, in terms of dynamics and safety. So as part of the ARC campaign, before those weeks, we've been doing impacts of weight days, where essentially people from fleet and government and that sort of stuff get an education around driving a car that's fully loaded with standard suspension on it and standard brakes versus our upgrade. And it's not about bagging manufacturers, because it's impossible to build a car that's going to have zero weight and a ton. So we provide a secondary manufacturer product, a gross vehicle mass upgrade, which is fit for purpose, fit for weight. So as part of that day, they drive that, and then obviously we give them a spin in the rally car as well as a bit of a Pedder's experience, and go through the history of Pedder's with them and that sort of stuff. And
that's been good, that program, hasn't it?
I'm probably giving away a few industry secrets here, so hopefully none of our competitors are listening. But when you look at the growth of Pedder's last year, 65% of the growth of Pedder's came from the 35 customers that came to those events. So, in terms of, return on investment, did they all spend because they came to those events? Obviously not, but certainly helped.
That's great. Supercars. Little birdie tells me you got to steer one at Calder Park.
Yes.
And tell me about that. It was a bit of a damp day too, I think, was it not?
Damp? Damp? Cold, wet, miserable. It was if you can imagine the perfect day at Calder, that was it. I had Will Brown and Brodie Kostecki
Erebus.
At Erebus at the time, and they drove my Skoda, the one that
cool.
So around the car park area, you'll know that well, the dirt circuit, which ironically we used for Rally Calder 13 years before, 12 years before. And those guys were so nervous. I've never met two guys that were so nervous to drive a car.
Really?
And I'm like, guys, it's just a rally car. There's nothing to hit. Like, there's a couple of poles that, geez, if you hit them, you're not doing too well. And Brodie was, very technical. Both very, very obviously naturally good drivers. Handbrake turns were a bit of an issue.
Okay.
But Will was sort of less technical, more flamboyant. He'd done some rallying stuff before, so it was just so fantastic to get their reaction. They had an absolute ball, and it was just awesome to give them the experience that we love, right, about rallying. So, and then it gets to my turn to go around the flat track at Calder. I dead set, I reckon it was 2 degrees. It was wet. They'd just done a drag race with that stuff that the VVT.
It was, it changes all that.
Onto the main straight. So Brodie goes out there, and I'm sitting next to him, and I'm noticing him. I've never sat in a supercar before. I'd never been in a supercar before, but he's struggling. Like, I know when a driver's struggling. He's struggling with the grip. He comes in, takes his helmet off, talks to the team, and he says, "That's the slipperiest road I've ever driven on." That is insane. Good luck.
Good luck.
Basically. So I get in there, and fair to say, I didn't set the world on fire. I don't think the lap record was any chance, but geez, it was an experience. Power, braking, the sound, the noise. It's just one of the best experiences of my life.
That's brilliant. As you approach, I think it's 2019, it's probably just months out from the pandemic, you and your brother are having a little glass of red wine.
Right.
He's the older brother, you're the younger brother, I think I've got that right.
Correct.
And he, on a whim, says, "Do you want to have a crack at the top job?"
Yeah.
And I think you had a sip of red wine and said, "Yeah, let's do that." Was it as simple as that? And then you've been at the reins ever since?
Yeah, look, I've been incredibly fortunate with Dad and Mark, is that dead set from a professional point of view. We used to fight a lot when we were kids and teenagers, like brothers do. But from a professional point of view, Mark and I have never ever had a fight.
That's amazing.
We've had disagreements, but those disagreements have never been more than 5 minutes. So we've always had an understanding. And Mark's, as I said before, we're yin and yang. We do personality tests, and if you put us together, we're the perfect human. Separate, we're totally different. He's a reader. He's a mechanic by trade, technical, great with his hands, terrible with detail, terrible with numbers.
Whereas you're meticulous.
I'm meticulous. So the business, had got to the point where that culture building, blokey, lack of detail thing had got to the end, and we were struggling, I think, and Mark and I both realised it at that time, as you said, over that glass of red, that it just needed something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd finished rallying, I thought, and I was heavily back in the business. I'm not sure Mark, I've never asked him, was probably enjoying it as much as he was, because I think he could see the pressures that were coming and all the new age stuff, like spreadsheets, for instance. Only a brother can say that.
I know that.
And yeah, we made the decision to change. He didn't tell me that 3 months later this thing called
a pandemic,
COVID was coming. But I think it's been a good journey. And look, that detailed and that look at the business from a professional lens rather than an emotional lens is why we've got Scott Manelli in the seat. Is that I've got an ego, but I'm also very, very practical in that, I think the next step for Pedders is for Mark and I and Caroline and Dad to take a step back and work on the culture and the opportunities from afar, and have someone that's skilled, someone that is the Sebastian Loeb of franchising in Australia, to go in there and do a better job than I've been able to do.
Nice. Pretty big moment for you though, but it does enable you, by the sounds of it, the both of you, to kind of hit the road again. Is that what's going to do here?
Yeah, we haven't worked out what our day's going to look like. I might have it looking for a job, Rusty, if you're up to one. If this rates, it's
it'll be good.
It'll be good. Yeah, but the theory is that when you're involved in the business, when you're ingrained in it, and when you're in the weeds, you don't get to see the opportunities. You don't get the opportunity to open your eyes and see the blue sky. So
and Scott, you've got a fresh set of eyes.
And that's why big businesses have boards. They have that overarching around compliance and opportunity and governance, and they have the people running the business and doing the stuff in the weeds. So hopefully, this marks the next step of Pedders in being a powerhouse in the world.
Great stuff. You talked about the comeback before. I can't remember the exact story. You'll have to tell me the details. Was it something around a chance to drive one of the Subarus for Dino or something? What transpires here? And why?
I'm not sure what was first. I think first was I think this one might have been ego, actually. I think I was watching an event and I was getting a little bit frustrated with the Harry and Lewis show and the fact that no one else could seem to get up with it. And Quinny would get close and that sort of stuff. And I just said, do you reckon I've still got it? And I rang Lane, and I think he had my old Skoda. It wasn't my old car, but it was the car that I drove in 16. And I thought, well, I'll just give it a shot. I'll just see whether I've still got it. It's been 7 years, and that sort of stuff. Spoke to Caroline. She said, again, no, but yes. And only if you got a good co-driver. So I thought, who's out there that's a good co-driver? Westo wasn't interested. He's making too much money as a dentist. Dale was off doing his stuff, blah, 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 blah. What about Glenn McNeil? So I rang GMAC, and he said no. He said, no, I'm interested. I'm starting up this business. I'm too busy. Power play business, rah, rah, rah. And I said, mate, look, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but if you say no, I'm not doing it, because I think there's only a few people that my wife would trust to put in the car, and you're one of them. So I finally convinced him, and I still think to the day, even sort of in the first few days of that event, I don't think he was that sure. About 8 seconds into the first stage is when I reckon he changed his mind and thought, this is pretty cool. And then we ended up winning the first stage. So again, when you think back to the Finland and the Renault with the Canberra thing, we did that again. Unfortunately, second stage we ran off the road into a bank in again a slippery condition and didn't finish rally. But it's fair to say that bug was back. And then, as you said, I got a great opportunity with Dino to test and to develop the Subaru Challenge cars. Which when you say to someone that's driven probably the best rally cars in the world, come and drive a standard literally rally car with suspension, brake pads and tyres, it doesn't sound that interesting. But again, my personality, competitive, detailed, perfectionistic, I absolutely loved it. In fact, I was saying to GMAC the other day, if I rated the most enjoyable rallies of my life, I reckon Canberra in the Subaru Challenge car would rate up there, because we were beating people that we shouldn't beat in production and all that sort, and we were having an absolute ball. And also I was helping a mate out. You know, Dean's been a big part of my life, and he's a great fella, and I could see what he wanted to do. He's been great commercially. He's just put his heart and soul into the sport. So I wanted to help out, and I loved it. And then, you know, geez, the bug's back, and I've got to go and spend $1 million on rallying again.
G-Mac says you have good conversations between the recce, between stages and stuff, and some of that has helped him too, I think, on the power play side. I think you've shared a bit of, you know, business convos, haven't you?
I think you know, I'll end up, I think, if you'll have me on the power play board, you know, that's an unbelievable business.
He's done super well there.
Him and Jeff David are just on a winner there. So you know, it's a scalable business. It's potentially a franchise business. It's just a money-making machine, you know, great. But you know what? It's a business that's based on passion. And that's why I love it, is that, you know, GMAC had the opportunity and was backed by Jeff, and Jeff said, you know, stop being lazy and you know, stop being a co-driver. You can't be that for the rest of your life. What are you going to do? Grow up. So he said, Jeff said, what do you want to do? And he goes, what do you love? He goes, I've only ever loved motorsport. And he goes, well, go and do something. Go and open a business that's involved with motorsport.
What a great chat.
So he did that, and that's why I love it, because those conversations that we're having, it's not about money and profit and how do I make the business better. It's how do I take my passion into that business and make it better. And that's why I think, you know, that's the Pedders thing. We've never wanted to be the biggest. We don't want to be Bill Stein or Persons or Repco or all that sort of stuff, but geez, we want to be the best at what we do.
Excellent. They tell me you're a fiend for an ice cream between stages or events. Is this true?
Yeah, I've got some issues. Do you? And that's one of them.
That's one of them.
Yeah, I do love ice cream. Yeah, in fact, yeah. If you go into an ice cream shop and see a 80-year-old bloke one day that looks a little bit like Scott Pedder, it probably is.
Okay. How are you framing the whole return to the sport? Because it's Harry Lewis, you know, great cars, competitive phase for those guys. It's awesome to think that we've been able to attract a Hayden Paddon to come and play in our backyard this year and all that sort of stuff. You're a competitive human being. You detailed that at the beginning of the chat today. Be fair in yourself, not hard on yourself. You give yourself a little report card. How you going
for this year?
Just generally. Yeah.
Again, you know, probably a follow-on for my career. Pace good. You know, I've probably fallen back into the habits that I spoke about in 2015 of putting a little bit too pressure on myself. You know, one car sponsors, arguably the best car, 49 years old, racing against two guys, particularly Harry and Hayden, and Lewis is not that far behind from a pace point of view, but two guys that probably would step into the top 5 or 10 in our Rally 2 Plus category if that ever happened across the world. So probably need to do the Finland thing again and enjoy myself a little bit more and recognise that it's okay to come third or fourth.
That's good you say that.
It's very hard to tell myself that, but I'm probably getting to the point now where I'm running out of years and I don't want to have those regrets. So a bit of a scoop here is that obviously after the Queensland accident, we're going to miss 2 rallies. And that's really, you know, both the physical and mental recuperation, and also the car copped a little bit of a hiding, and it needs to be done properly. But it's
bit of a mission in all that, getting parts and stuff and what have you.
And there's one particular thing that's going to take a little bit more time than we had anticipated, which is minor, but unfortunately the homologation rules are what it is. But the brakes really, for me to go, stop being an idiot, Scott. Stop. You could just smell the roses, you know. And unfortunately, I've got a similarly competitive co-driver with me. But we've had a discussion, and you know, we're going to go to Tassie with the intent of having the best time that we can possibly have.
Good.
And just see what happens from there. And you know, and I probably need to, you know, be competitive, be perfectionistic, but also swallow my ego a little bit and recognise that I'm 49, and maybe Hayden Paddon and maybe Harry Bates are better than me, you know, and that's hard to say. I don't think that's the case, but maybe that is, and I just need to recognise that maybe I've only got 5 years of driving, or 2 years, or 1 year, or 10 years, but I don't want to get to the end of that and regret the experiences that I've been able to get.
Beautiful. I won't get into it. He gave me a beautiful kind of summary around that about, you being your harshest critic and maybe not realising how good you are, maybe underestimating how much you literally love it, mate. And you've just sort of summed that up there then.
Yeah, I do love it. But interestingly, and Neil Bates and I have had this conversation, I don't love the driving. I love
the competition?
I love the competition.
Okay.
I love winning. I love that feeling. The best feeling in a rally car, apart from standing on a podium and spraying champagne, is that feeling between the finish board and the control when you know that you've won that stage. You know that no one in the world is going to beat you. Now, that sometimes bites you in when you go in the World Championship and someone has beaten you, but I reckon 99 times out of 100, I know. You just know. You've got to the end of that stage and you're like, just for that small moment in time, you are unbelievably good. And then when you even break that down, that one crest, that one corner, where from a perfectionistic point of view, where you've imagined how you're going to go in there and you've planned how you're going to go in there, and that's obviously in tenths of seconds and hundreds of seconds,
and then it plays out like that.
It plays out. It doesn't happen very often. It's like golf. I play golf. I hate golf. Ironically, I play sports between trees that are perfectionistic and frustrating and annoying. But it's the same thing. You can hit 100 terrible shots, but you can hit that one, and that one brings you back. And it's the same with rallying. It's that one corner, one stage. But it's not, for me, it's not about the driving. I don't get overly the enjoyment. I don't get the buzz out of the adrenaline. I get the buzz out of that chasing perfection and ultimately going head to head with someone and beating them.
Nice. I reckon we finish it there, mate. That's been an absolutely beautiful chat. Thank you. And I hope when we see you in Burnie with that machine all ready to rock, that you do exactly what you just talked about. Just go and enjoy it for the purity, the pure love that you have for it. And you still, across all of those eras, the different classes of cars, the great things that you've shown along the way, there's not many, I reckon, globally that could talk at your age, that they could still be delivering the same fashion that you've done. And congratulations on the not just the title, but the never-ending fascination, passion that you have for the sport and for the ARC. Well done.
No, thanks very much, Rusty. Really appreciate it.